What's with the scarcity mindset? Hey there, my friends. That quick intro just about scarcity mindset for today's episode. It was interesting because have you ever had these ideas or these thought processes hit you kind of at the weirdest time? And what I mean by that is, so this morning, as I was having a shower, I'm running out of body wash. And I all of a sudden found myself subconsciously, not really even thinking about it, using like half the body wash I would normally use because I was running out. So, my question is, why does this whole process in our head, when things get tight, when we feel constriction, whether it be in our industry, whether it be with our sales, whether it be anything, we fall into these slumps and we tend to use less, we tend to consume less, when really there's a certain amount that, if you look at soap, for example, there's a certain amount that keeps us clean. But why is it when we get a brand new bottle, we're more liberal with it, right? So this is the question that started popping in my head. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, well, why are we, maybe more um, refined, or not refined, but more conscious when things get towards the end? Why wouldn't we be conscious when the bottle's full? Like if we're overusing it when the bottles are full, when we're overdoing it, when the industry, when the markets are high, like where is that gap in our thinking process? Where is that gap in the way we do things, right? Like if you think about it from a sales perspective, right? So one thing I've been constantly aware of, probably for the last 20 years of my career, was the fact that, a lot of times as a salesperson, we sell and then we get to a level that we enjoy. So we get to this level of productivity or this level of profitability, if you will, and then we coast and we don't necessarily consistently raise the bar. So we coast. And then what happens when we coast? We lose a client or two and we find ourselves down here. And then it's this mad dash to sell again. So I started thinking about this because and this is the interesting part. Maybe you can relate to this. And if you can, please let me know. Yeah, it's interesting because for about 2 weeks, I've been saying in my head, and I've been grocery shopping 3 times since I've been saying it, I need to get more. But why is it we wait till the last second to do it? Almost when we're out, when we got like none left. And so then we have that scarcity mindset, right? And that scarcity mindset then leads to this, oh my God, I got to do it now. And then we artificially inflate the urgency of what we got to do. Whereas if we just kept our foot on the gas the whole time and kept things rolling the way that we know it has to be, why we would never be in this position. So why is it that we put ourselves in this position when we know there's a better way? When we know that we can, like take care of things in a more expeditious fashion, take care of things before we hit that feeling or that block, if you will, or the dive off the cliff. How do we do all of that? Or why do we do all of that? Not how. And this is an interesting I'm I don't know if necessarily the word I'm looking for is phenomenon in our life or in how we go about our days. So what I'm doing, actually, I decided this morning is I'm going to start reaching out to some really interesting people and people that are high up in this like mental mindset state, and I'm going to be bringing them to you because I don't know the answer to it. um I could tell you this, that I know from a business perspective, we have to keep selling. I screamed it from the mountaintops when the pandemic hit that, as soon as the rates started going up and as soon as started people making a ton of money, I was like, continue to sell, be honest and open about what you're doing. And I don't know how many people really follow that. And this is not something where I'm some dude sitting here saying, oh, this is the way you should do it. It's like, these are lessons that I've learned through my years of selling and not selling. these are lessons I've learned through the years where I've been doing really well. And then I coasted and I started golfing 4 or 5 days a week and I stopped paying attention to customers. And I thought, you know what? I made it. I made it. I did this. Like I remember vividly, I was about 10 years into my career and I had an opportunity to open a brokerage with two individuals. And we opened it. And within 2 years, I'd got the brokerage to just about 35, 37 million. And after 2 years, so think about this for a second. This is a baby. This is still an infant. 2 years old, a company that's 2 years old is still an infant. And at that point, I remember vividly sitting in my business partner's office going, all right, well, I put in my time. And he looked at me, he goes, what? I said, well, I put in my time. Like I built this company to where it is. I put in my time. I think it's time we hire a bunch of people and I kind of step back and I enjoy the fruits of my labor. And he's like, Dan, this is an infant. Like this company can go out of business in 3 months if we don't watch it. And in my head, I couldn't compute that. 'Cause I'm like, we just did 37 million in revenue. We're averaging 29% GP. Like, how is that possible? And, so we opened it in 2005. This is the end of 2007 going into 2008. What happened in 2008? The economy collapsed. I disassociated. I disconnected with the business. I was not enthralled about it anymore. I was waking up in the morning going, oh, man, I got to get up today. I don't really feel like it. Started, at that point, quote unquote, working from home, but just not going in. When I would go in, I'd go out for lunch with a client and I'd stay for 6 hours. And, these types of things aren't going to grow your business. And it came to the point because of what now, don't get me wrong. I don't blame the economic part in the closing of my company. I blame myself. But it allowed that landslide to get faster because of what was going on in the market, right? So we're kind of facing that today. And all of you, out there that maybe are feeling that scarcity mindset, now I believe more than ever is a time to invest in yourself because here's the thing. I'd rather you invest in yourself and what kind of tools are you using to get things done in a more expeditious manner that help you increase your productivity, that give you the education you need to get where you want to go. Now is the time to do it. During the pandemic, a lot of people retooled, hence the reason there's a lot of gaps in specific markets and industries because people retooled. One of the biggest gaps is in the restaurant industry. I see it starting to come back, but I don't know about you guys, but for us, where we live anyways, there's a few restaurants that no longer do dine-in because they just can't find servers. It's probably all the bigger ones, the chains where they have consistent business where, you can get these shifts it's these smaller guys that we're like, well, we're not really busy tonight. Don't bother, because people want dedicated employment, right? I mean, it's just normal. But this scarcity mindset, I think, is one that I think we really all got to pay attention to. And maybe you have, but subconsciously just start or consciously start thinking about these things and watch how you respond, or a better word would be react to certain situations where it's almost unconscious, kind of like what happened to me this morning. And it's interesting because I know I need it. I've known I've needed it to the point where I remember being in the grocery store and I'm looking and it's like I'm almost at the cash and I'm like, oh yeah, I need that. And I look down the aisle and I'm like, oh, that's so far away. Maybe you guys do this. I'm like, oh my God, that is so far away. I'll get it next week. I got enough to last me. Right. And it wasn't. And so now it's like you're sparingly using it. And I think this is what's happening to us as individuals in the market is we're going out sparingly instead of going out gangbusters. And it's funny, I was on a demo with a prospect yesterday and I was showing them our system. And I showed them one tool in our system that's saving people over 3 months a year of time doing one task that we've automated. And in the development and testing of this, the idea and the strategy has always been, how can we get more done in the same amount of time? right? So it's not a matter of how do we work 16 hours today instead of 8 hours to get more done. It's how do we take that 8 hours and compound our production in that 8 hours to get us where we need to go. And speaking to this individual about it, we were talking, and I remember the topic, I guess, for lack of a better term, was that we have this ability to compound what we do. And over that time, in 3 months, how many companies can you bring on board and start doing business with? And it was interesting because I've always been of the opinion, we'll get whatever works for you. And yesterday changed that for me, because I looked at it, and this individual was looking at going with our mid-tier program. And I said, okay, so what's your close ratio? And the answer was that it's about 16 to 20% based on qualified prospects. And I said, so how many qualified prospects would you have with, let's say, 100 leads, 3 or 4? So I said, okay, so let's say average 4, right? So 20%, in that 20-25% range would be one customer out of every 4. And I started looking, and I said, okay, the difference between our mid and top tier is an extra 100 leads a month. So if you had an extra 1,200 leads a year and you closed 20%, would that make up the extra $1,000 a year it is for the top level? And the answer was yes. And so when I put it in that respect, even in my own head, in that respect, it was a no-brainer, right? And then we started looking and saying, okay, what are the tools can you get rid of that you're already paying for? And then we freed up an extra $180 a month just with the tools they had right now. So then you take that 180, you times that by 12, it's pretty much paid for itself, even if it doesn't land you one customer. And all of a sudden I started looking at it going, wow, that limitation in my head stopped me from doing the higher level math that made things a no-brainer. And here's where I'm going with this. And I'm not going with it for any other reason than this. The investment you make every day adds up. And yes, you might be feeling the rejection paralysis. A lot of people are. But here's the thing. If you shift your perspective about it, it will change. And if you continue to do it and don't do what I did and look down the aisle and say, I'll do it later, it's do it now. Go now. And that way I don't have to face scarcity because I'm moving forward to where I want to go. And I think that's the big message here. And again, I'm going to be getting some people on the show that talk about this scarcity mindset that actually have like a higher education than me on it and how this actually chemically affects the body. But I have a feeling it's going to be a very interesting conversation when we bring an individual on about it. So I'm looking forward to that, but I just thought I'd share that kind of thought process with you. As you can see, it's not something that I've scripted out today. I just kind of, as I'm thinking through it, I'm like, well, for starters, we all know if we talk about something, we think through it better. So this is part of me having that own personal therapy, my friends. Until next time, go out there, make every call educational, and crush your sales. We'll see you next week. Take care.